Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming to the PASS Summit 2011. It's pretty awesome. I don't know if you guys caught the keynote. David DeWitt, Dr. David DeWitt's at genius level, obviously. Very cool stuff. Here's more cool stuff. You've probably heard in the first keynote, PowerPivot, which is my presentation. I consider it to be a cool reporting tool. And I'm Scott Schomer. I'm a database administrator. I'm not an instructor. I work for Quicken Loans in Michigan. And we think it's great. So I'm going to show you what I think of it from a database administrator point of view. It's breaking on the scene, so whether you like it or not, here's what it is. And by the way, a little about me. I have over a decade of database administration experience, specifically in Michigan's mortgage and medical industry. So I've been doing all kinds of queries and whatever else you can think of, from a little bit of BI, but mostly RDBMS, engine tuning and development. So, a quick intro. And by the way, let me just say as a disclaimer, if this is not what you're expecting or want at any time, feel free to take off. I take no offense. I've been into a couple sessions that I didn't really think that were as applicable to me as the description, so I've seen some people leave. I didn't, but take off if you want to. No big deal. I will not be offended at any time. And by the way, we're just going to read off about 10 slides and then just jump into a hands-on demo. And you can download the slides, the demo, everything after this. Don't take any notes. I hate notes. Download it all. It's the way every presentation should be. So PowerPivot did for Excel what Fire did for food, in my opinion. It added style and flavor. Now here's a tool that allows you to quickly and easily create useful reports by slicing and dicing data. Slicing is pretty much the only key word you're going to have to learn for this. And by the way, slicing just means filtering, which I put right there. Now this is an interactive demo, so feel free to ask questions throughout the entire presentation. And there should be time at the end for some questions and answers. And I may run a little short on the time because I've had this demo before where I've been asked half an hour worth of questions. So I try to allocate time for that as well. So the PowerPivot add-on for Excel 2010 streamlines the process of combining different data sources like analysis services cubes, SQL databases, Access databases, other Excel worksheets, and more to perform in-memory self-service analytics. That's a wordful, but in English, what that means is it lets you do cool reporting. You can give this to Power users when you get back on Monday, show them how to use it, and they can be running out the gate. You can show them this exact demo because you can download it too. And we originally tried this program out, PowerPivot out, as a proof of concept at Quicken Loans. I do a lot of proof of concept work, seeing if transaction logs will ship over mirroring, which they won't, by the way. Or not transaction logs. See if change data capture will go to a DR site over mirroring or T-log shipping. Don't ever do that. If you have that in your production systems, take it out. I do all kinds of stuff like that, and I build call recording systems and all kinds of fun stuff that's kind of super, super nerdy. So at Quicken Loans, we had a meeting over a year ago and said to people, business and intelligence people, managers, technical people, said, if you could be king for one day, what would you want? You can ask for anything. IT related, of course. So pretty much the big thing everybody said, all the BI, all the DW, all the people writing and developing said, I would have access to all the data that I can get in production without begging a DBA for permissions or wondering if I have everything set up right. I would just have access to everything. This tool will give you that. Obviously, with a little data and maybe secure data, there comes a little responsibility, but we'll talk about that towards the end. And we tried it at Quicken Loans first. I got hired in there a little over a year ago, and there were already people in different departments, IT and marketing and other ones, trying to get this tool to work. Nobody could get it to work. It had a kind of a steep learning curve a year ago. Now there's some great videos and other information out on the web. But I designed this presentation for them and showed this to our data operations department, which is about 70 folks doing business intelligence, data warehouse, database administration, and some upper IT managers. And thanks to that, we actively consume these every day. We hand these to people in our different departments. Say, here's how to use it, here's how to do it. It's not too hard, not too high of a learning curve. As long as you know Excel, you can be taught this. And they love it, because they didn't have it before. So you want to look good? Check it out. So what makes a thing tick, right? Here's another buzzword that you may hear, and it may be more in what was formerly Denali and is now SQL Server 2012. At least they made it to the middle of next year. I was worried about that. I was wondering when they're going to release it. It's called VertiPaq. So the VertiPaq engine processor creates OLAP cubes in the background, which is really just XML, by the way, which allows for data compression and the sorting of Power of PivotTables and PivotCharts to consume. So columns from the imported data are stored in memory. So each column essentially becomes its own index. And most good DBAs know that indexes are typically, as long as you don't have too many or crazy ones, faster to search through than a table, like a table scan, for example. But as usual, it depends. And in my personal opinion, I think that columnar data stores, which you hear a lot about this at the first keynote, for example. I heard PowerPivot mentioned like 40 times or something ridiculous. I think columnar data stores are awesome. Some other database systems have them, not Microsoft SQL, but now they've got them. They're implementing this in analysis services, and people are loving it. It's read-only, so you make it once, and you can't do an insert or an update or delete to it, but it's fast. So loading them over and over again, because of the speed, is just not really exactly a bad thing. It's just nice to have, nice to play with. I'm pretty sure SQL 2016 will probably have this very heavily integrated, to say the least. This is going to run the show going forward. Maybe even analysis services might go away in 2016. Why not if you can do everything in the relational database engine? So slight paradigm shift, new stuff, new buzzwords. I think it's really fun. And maybe they might release it with, I don't know, SQL 2012 R2 or something like that, where you can do different things with updates and deletes in the columnar data stores. We'll see what happens. So the top 10 reasons to use PowerPivot. I like top 10 lists. They're easy sell to managers. They don't have any time to read anything anyway. A couple bullet points. So number 10, it lets users create their own reports and charts. They already have Excel. You just get them Excel 2010 if they don't have it, and you get them this free add-on. And then they can do it once you show them how. Number 9, lets you do complex analysis by combining data from different data sources that would normally take stuff like integration services. Upcoming is going to be integration server, custom reports, or custom written programs, or third-party add-ins. No more. Number 8, I hate these myself. You don't have to do any more Excel VLOOKUPs. If you've ever had to do these are a pain. It's all gone. Welcome to PowerPivot. Makes it real easy. So you can use this to resolve fields and other worksheets without VLOOKUP. Number 7, data is stored in the workbook around a 10-to-1 disk to memory compression. So I wrote this demo about a year ago, basically. And after doing more and more regression testing, I found that on average, mind you, this is an average, depending on the type of data you have, it's really more like 100-to-1. And it can be upwards of 200 to 300-to-1. It's awesome. So say you have a server with 24 gig of RAM in it. That's a lot of RAM. It's a fair amount. And say you had a terabyte database. Why not load it into RAM? Think about that going forward with the relational database engine beyond this presentation, and writing's on the wall for that. Why wouldn't you want your database to be in RAM? Everybody knows RAM's quick. A lot faster than disk. Number 6, you can start using the tool today with a few prerequisites, and I cover those as well during the presentation. Number 5, it overcomes the Excel limit of 1 million rows. So before PowerPivot, Excel 2010, somebody gives you a database or access to an Oracle database or an Access database or whatever, and then you give it to an end user and say, hey, use Excel to plug into it. It's got a 1,500,000 rows or 2 million rows. It's not a lot of rows, right? Like we can write tables with 1 million rows in them fairly easy. Online transaction applications typically have more than a couple million rows in some of their tables. If that person had Excel, you're out of luck. But now they can consume it. They can use it all today on Monday when they get back. They can load it up and do cool stuff with it. Thanks to this. Number 4, you will probably impress your friends at work by using PowerPivot. I mean, you want to look good, right? I do. So what I do is I try to find cool programs and projects that make me look good at work. It's not rocket science, right? That's how you get raises. That's how you advance. That's how you get noticed. So you want to impress your friends? Show them this. Number 3, you don't have to wait 6 months or a year for your data warehouse department to add a column to an analysis services cube. If you're fortunate enough to have a data warehouse department or whatever, anybody doing analysis services, if you're a larger shop or company, you say, hey, I want to add, we got something new. People started getting email addresses now. And now they have mobile phone numbers. They might have 2 phone numbers. Can we add that to the analysis services cubes? They say, well, we'll get back to you. Might take 6 months, might take a year, might take never if priorities are shifting. You might not be the highest guy in the totem pole. You might never get it. But with this, poof, magic. I like the magic. You can get it right away if you have the access. It's very near and dear to my heart, that one. I don't like to wait. I'm very impatient. Number 2, everybody loves Excel. Raise a hand, anybody. Does anybody here have a company where they don't use Excel? I see no hands. Excel's everywhere. It's proliferated on the market. Every department has it. Everyone's opened it at one point or another. Everyone uses it. Financial people love it. Managers love it. It does graphs. People get it. You're just showing them another thing they can do with a very, very familiar tool. And they love that because they think, hey, I can do this free add-on. Wonderful. Good to go. And number 1, the top reason for using PowerPivot, it's free. I'm very cheap. I like free stuff, free food, free whatever. PowerPivot's a free download. All you have to do is learn how to use it. So a little PowerPivot Pre-flight checklist. These are things I've personally been burned on, and other people I've worked with have been burned on as well. It's been great. Here we go. So you must have Excel 2010, the 64-bit version if at all possible. Now, like I said, I've been burned on this, and a software director that I work with and some other high business intelligence folks have been burned on this as well. 32-bit version works. Absolutely use the 32-bit version. Try it out. Learn it. Chances are, if you have a PC and it's a newer one, they've loaded 64-bit Windows 7 on there or something, right? 64-bit Windows operating systems can address all the RAM. You can also have a 64-bit operating system with a 32-bit version of Office running on it. That's kind of tricky. So if you ever go to Help and About, you can kind of figure out what version you are. Or you can Google or Bing how to find out your version number in any program that you have if you don't know the steps. So there's the 64-bit bummer factor, as I call it. Not very fun to deal with. So say you have Outlook installed and Office installed. Let's cover that. You already have it installed, right? You have Outlook 2010, Excel 2010. This might require a reinstall if you go to the 64-bit version, because you can't mix and match 32-bit and 64-bit versions of Microsoft Office. So this means you already have Outlook, Word, Excel. You say, hey, I'm just going to up biggie size Excel to 64-bit. You can't. You have to uninstall everything. So if you have an email signature, if you have separate programs integrated to Outlook, like Resource Scheduler, Meeting Planner, Semantics eVault, very popular in enterprise-level applications, they might not even have a 64-bit connector, and it might not work. And if you do actually have to do that, do a reinstall of your Office, like uninstall the whole thing, reinstall it, make sure you put on Service Pack 1. Makes Outlook 2010 incredibly stabler. Just a word to the wise. And also, if you want to get it, if you can remember this, it's free. You can download it at powerpivot.com. I like that kind of name. It's not too hard for me to remember. Maybe you can remember it too. Name of the presentation. So let's dive in and import some data. So you can think of PowerPivot as just another extension to the familiar pivot tables you already use in Excel. What do people in my demos usually say when I demonstrate this? They say, what's a pivot table? We don't know. Who cares, right? Well, right here in the demo, you can learn how to use pivot tables as well. It's not that hard. There's a little learning curve to it, but once somebody shows it to you very easily, you'll get it. You'll be able to consume this and use this yourself. And please note that the sample schema and data that I created is just for illustration purposes only. It is not fully normalized. Don't burn me on this, guys. It's just fun data, just sample stuff. And the demo data creation scripts and the files will be available for download with everything. Everything I do, all the demos, all the scripts, everything. You can just go to the site and download them. Why take notes? So we are done with the presentation of the PowerPoint stuff. And actually, the remainder of the PowerPoint slides, which I've printed just so I can look at them while I talk about the demonstration, are also available for download in the exact same format that I just showed. Point and click, step by step, every single step you have to do to replicate the entire demo. Download it, plagiarize it. Please give me some credit. Do whatever you do. No big deal. It's all original information. And we're going to talk about 4 ways that we can import data. We're going to import a SQL Server table. So some data from a table, right? A couple tables. A CSV. We'll talk more about that if you don't know what it is when we hit it. A stored procedure. A way to retrieve data from one or more tables or views or functions or whatever you have behind it. And some data from the web, assuming we have enough time. And by the way, we're going to build the exact one I had at the very first slide. This. When we're done, you're going to see that, minus the flaming Saganaki, which I really like, by the way. So we're going to see a pretty chart, some stuff you can give to your manager when you get back. And say, here, click this to figure out how to do it. Let's go to the demo. Here we go. So let's talk about a scenario. You have a CIO, we'll call him Crazy Bob. And he wants a breakdown of order totals by store. Not exactly a mind-boggling request, right? We all know how to do this in the relational database engine. And he wants whatever other stuff you can come up with from the data. And he looks all frantic, and he probably hasn't slept in 3 days. He's on his 3rd wife. It's a standard CIO story, right? It's just the way it is. So we're going to open Excel. Like I said, this is a point-and-click demo. And by the way, this is my first time at PASS and my first presentation I've ever given. So don't rate me too harshly, guys. I'm learning as I go. I've never been before. So we've opened Excel. We're going to save our spreadsheet. Call it PASS. Call it CTemp PASS Fun. PowerPivot PASS Fun. Let's look how big that is. I'd like to know file sizes and data sizes. So PASS Fun I see down there is 9K. You don't have to read it. It's just what it is. We'll go back to Excel in the meantime. So up at the top, I've already downloaded PowerPivot and installed it because I didn't want to break my demo. You see up here at the top, Home, Load Test, PowerPivot, right up there. So we're going to click it. Then we have a big button here called PowerPivot Window. We'll click that. By the way, if you haven't grabbed this Zoom It tool, it's awesome. I just downloaded it this morning. It's free. It's on Microsoft's site. It's really easy and makes you look good again. Just load some type of new add-on window. Now let's load the data. Let's open up SQL Server. Configuration Manager. So we're still in Excel. All I'm doing is starting up my SQL Server instance, which you would normally have running all the time, but I'm just doing a demo. So let's click From Database. Pretty easy. From SQL Server. There's a whole bunch of other things you can import as well. We're just going to cover these. My computer happens to be called Nerd Machine. SQL 2008 R2. I have a named instance, which you may or may not have more than one instance running on your machine. I've got a bunch. Click the drop down. Oh, it connected. I typed it in right. That's good. You see Contoso, AdventureWorks. There's lots of demos online for those. I just call this one Sales Bizzo. And I click Next. You don't have to test the connection. If you can get a drop down with your database list, you're golden. We're going to select from a list of tables and views to import. But before we do that, let's actually generate 4 million rows of OLTP data. Management Studio, very near and dear to my heart. So will take about 37 seconds. 4 million rows, demo creation script, download it when you're done, or download it if you download my stuff. It's great for load testing on any system. I load test all my store procedures and everything I do against at least 1 million rows. Everything. I know if it doesn't have 1 million rows in there today, maybe it will one day. And if it does, I say, hey, I load tested it for 1 million. What do you want, right? You can go upwards from there. This one's a 4 million row demo. Open, file, database script, open. These are all already uploaded to the past website, by the way. Cool. Who cares about the internals? I like the magic factor, right? Does some stuff. Now it's going to create some sample sales order database. It's got some products, it's got some orders, it's got some order details. 4 million. And if we look in the bottom right-hand corner, we can see the time. 13 seconds. I guess this doesn't refresh. Sorry. Like I said, I downloaded this morning. What's that? Yes. I have not counted any limit for the number of rows. There might be a theoretical limit, but every single thing I've thrown at PowerPivot, in the 64-bit version specifically, it's been able to take. And my work computer is a dual quad-core Xeon with 6 gig of RAM. That's my demo box, basically, my sandbox before I go to like a development environment. And by the way, I highly recommend load testing on a really old PC for everything. If you can get it to run great on an old Pentium 4, it's going to run awesome in production. That's what I do for everything. Did someone else over here have a question?
I was just going to say on 32-bit Excel, you can't have files larger than 2 gigs.
That's a bummer factor. We'll cover that in a second. 2 gigs is...
I don't know how many rows you have now, but you get 2 gigs or whatever. But with 64-bit,
So the 32-bit version of Excel, file limit of 2 gigs. We'll go over file limits as well. That's why I showed you the 9 kilobit, 9K initial file size at the beginning. Yes, sir?
One of the things that we're doing in our shop is we're doing some applications for virtualizing this specific app. So if you have a 32-bit environment, possibly have your 64-bit Excel virtualized, and then be able to go straight to that and then run that. I don't know if you can stuff it.
So we do a lot of that stuff too. We'll have a separate VM. We're a huge VMware shop. We're not huge, but we're getting there. And we're virtualizing a lot of databases and engines and stuff like that in all of our midware front app tier stuff. So if you've got 32-bit on your desktop, maybe you can spin up a VM. By the way, VMware is free, right? And install Windows 7 on there with Excel 64-bit 2010 version. Someone back there have a question. Yes, the other option, the question was, can you also select queries? Yes, you can, and we're going to select one coming up. Absolutely. So down here, my laptop's running slow today. That took 50 seconds to generate 4 million rows of data. Like I said, it's a great load tester. So we're going to select from a list of queries, so from a list of tables, excuse me, and choose the data to import. And I'm sorry I didn't use Contoso or AdventureWorks. I'm so tired of Contoso. I just wanted to do something different and slightly original. And like I said, we will be able to do the pull from a query later in the demo. So we're going to click Next. And we're going to click Sales Order. Pretty straightforward. Now some DBAs smarter than me already created some relations. So we're going to click Select Related Tables. Poof, put some other checkboxes in there, as you can see. Great, related stuff. That's always what you want. We're going to rename the friendly name to this to, I don't give a manager an order table or a sales order or something like that. They don't speak like that. I'll give them sales order. Instead of sales order, I'll rename that to the friendly name of sales. And I'll also preview and filter that by clicking preview and filter in the bottom right. And I'm going to uncheck cost of materials because we're not doing a cost analysis. I recommend unchecking as many fields as you can from this. Not because it takes up a lot more data, it just makes it a lot cleaner. You can always add them later, even to stuff you've already imported, if you want to re-import from the same tables. So I click OK. I'm going to click Finish. Click. Let's see how long it takes to import 4 million rows. Might take a while, right? 300,000, 600,000, almost a million, 1,000,003. Whenever I show this to data warehouse folks in different companies or wherever I'm presenting. I just presented at SQL Saturday in Kalamazoo. They're blown away by this. I personally can't write anything that imports data this fast and this clean into anything. And they can't either. They have to scrub their data, make sure it's all good. This just grabs it, whatever it is. And it'll give you more information like details. I don't ever click on that. You can just to learn it, but green means go, guys. You see yellow, if there's some type of warning or a problem, red, it just didn't work. If it's green, you're all set. So we click close, and look, down below we have some stuff. Location, product, and sales, the 3 tables that were checked. Amazing. So in just a few seconds, we imported 4 million rows. It was under a minute. So let's talk about some of the differences between Excel and the PowerPivot add-on window. This is great to note if you're in IT, which I'm sure most of you are. So PowerPivot is an add-in. Let's try changing windows. Control-Tab gets me back. Let me do it a couple times. Gets me back to Excel. I can toggle between them. I can close PowerPivot and bring it back in, bring it back up by clicking the PowerPivot window. It's an add-in. It's part of Excel, but it's not Excel. And as you may have noticed, on the left-hand side, there are no line numbers. If we go back to Excel, we all know there's line numbers on the left. PowerPivot doesn't have these. These are questions managers often ask when you deploy the actual program itself, which we're doing right now, by the way. So let's query some data. Let's jump right in, right? We'll click on Pivot Table. We're going to learn about these. We're going to click on Chart and Table Horizontal. We're going to select New Worksheet. It doesn't matter if you do an existing worksheet or not. Just pick New. It already gives you 3 blank sheets anyway for some reason. And there we go. You see some stuff happened. In the right-hand corner, we see a difference between pivot tables and PowerPivot. Normally, you will only have one table you can work within a pivot table. PowerPivot lets you do multiple. So we have multiple drop-downs for the 3 tables that we have. We have location, product, and sales. And we also have 2 more pivot areas below called slicers. And remember, a slicer is just a way to filter the data, like your standard where clause or a filter in Excel or Access or whatever you use. So down here we have slicers horizontal and slicers vertical. Pretty cool. It's worthy to note. So we remember we're going back to this crazy Bob thing. He wants a breakdown of orders by store. Yes, sir.
Just to be clear, you're in Excel now.
Yep, absolutely. Forget SQL.
Not PowerPivot, but so because you did a pivot chart and because PowerPivot is open and has data, it's you look at PowerPivot as opposed to the traditional pivot table function?
Yes. We're going to consume the data from PowerPivot in the background. It's just XML if you ever open it up and look at it. It's all stored in your .slxs file. Everything. And we'll look at the file sizes so you can see how big that is. 4 million rows might be a lot of data, right? So let's expand sales and click on order total. Click. Okay, I'm going to scroll over to the right. Look, we just got a sum of 4 million rows. Poof. I'm not a DBA now. I'm Bob in accounting or whatever, right? He can do this. So under location, let's expand that. And let's click region. Okay, what do they ask for? Breakdown by region. That's nice. Great to hand to a manager. Here's how your stores are doing for total sales. Great. And we're also going to click on location name because he wanted the sales breakdown by store. Poof, we've just broken down everything, filtering real time in Excel, 4 million rows for all my sales figures. By the way, this is 10 years of data. So if you can do anything like this with whatever you're doing in the mortgage, medical, banking, whatever industry you have, you can do this exact same demo. Tailor it to yourself. I think it's great. If you scroll over to the right, it gives us our sums, and down below, a nice handy-dandy grand total. I'm not a developer at this point. I'm some guy that somebody in IT gave me Excel and said, hey, you can do this stuff. Here's how to do it. You have the access.
Are those numbers, like if I look at like K4, is that a number or a formula?
K4 is actually a number. It's a lot of money. It's a very profitable industry that I made up.
No, I'm just saying if I clicked in there, is there a formula that's
Nope, it's all handled in the background. You don't have to do any formula, no Excel, no DAX, no VBA, no anything. No MDX, that's always fun. Yes, sir, question.
Maybe you're going to cover this. What did this do to my database with this vegetable for my rows? How many people can I give this out to that are doing it at the same time?
The magic question, you give them the keys to the kingdom. What if they do something crazy? I showed that you could grab from tables. You can also write TSQL. That could be bad. Leave off the where clause. Join a couple things. Do a cross join. Do a few of those. Those are always fun, right? Bring your system to its knees. With a little access gives a little responsibility. If you have a read-only standby, or you can make one, or do a snapshot with mirroring, or anything like that, great. Remember, this is sales data for the last 10 years. You don't always need that live in your OLTP system. If you can offload that somewhere else to a beta box, maybe secure it, let them bring that to its knees. Max out the CPU. It's not a heavy pull, though. Someone, your question, yes, ma'am. Yes, you can control your security anywhere of a couple different ways in Microsoft SQL. I don't usually do it with views. I usually do roles and domain groups. I'm not personally a member. I'm not personally in any of my databases I administrate. Oh yeah, yeah. We give these to people. Say, here you go. Click on the buttons. They don't have to build it, right? Someone else have a question? Yes, sir. Yes, this is real-time, 4 million rows of data. It's stale data. I've imported it into Excel. It is not live data anymore. So it's as of the time I imported it. Absolutely. So the question was, do you have to refresh it all the time? If you want new data, absolutely. You saw how long the import was. It wasn't a mind bender, so you could theoretically refresh it fairly often. If you ever upload this into SharePoint, for example, you can set a job to upload it. No, you have to use the analysis services version of it. And then you can refresh your data every minute if you're crazy, every 5 minutes. I like to have 5 minutes. That seems like a long time to me. Most DW shops have 24 hours. But if you just do regular Excel and you upload that into SharePoint, you kind of biggie size it, if you will, you can only refresh it once a day. Someone back there have a question. Yep, you can. Say that again. Can you get data from the cube and what, sir? You can get data from the cube. So you saw me import data from a relational database, right? Replace the word relational database with cube or CSV file or a chart from the web, anything. Or say you have 5 cubes you want to give to somebody, and you have some other data you want them to import from your relational database system. You can import it all into PowerPivot and do relations that we'll show in a minute, and they can do it all. Yes, sir?
Are you able to automate having your data refresh, for example, every time you open this workbook?
No. You have to do it manually. And by the way, the refresh on the home screen here in Excel, what I would call maybe the home screen, is not the same as the PowerPivot refresh. A lot of users go on that home screen and try to click it and nothing happens. They have to go to the PowerPivot add-on, which has a separate refresh. Yes, sir? 1 second, ma'am. You just do another import. You can refresh an existing import as well, and it brings in the new column. Yep. It's pretty slick. Yes, ma'am. So can you bring in just the last 6 months worth of data? Absolutely. You can write a view that had a filter in it, or you can write TSQL that had a filter, or a stored procedure that you pass a parameter to. I found that most people I give this to, in departments or teams or whatever you want to call them, they typically want a stored procedure with some parameters. Make it real simple for them and call them friendly, good names. All right. Yes? It's actually not compatible with 2007. Perhaps one of the CTPs were. By the way, if you ever Google any of the demos or try to find them online, if they're written for a CTP, don't watch that one. They're slightly different. You'll see different things you click on. You want it to be consistent with your user experience, right? So forget Excel 27. Go Excel 2010. Back to the demo. Good questions, guys. So I also include a screenshot. It should look like this picture below. Yes, sir. Question. So the question is, if you save it just like it is and then send it as an email to Sally in the finance department, can she open it up and use it? The answer is yes. There's a couple inherent problems with that you should just be cognizant of, like aware of, right? So say I'm a bad DBA. I put your credit card information in there. Your social security number is one of the columns, right? Maybe your address, your phone number. So one, that's not secure. You should probably have that encrypted. Also, if you send it an email, you're basically sending it in plain text. Very not secure. So you also have to, like anything, think in terms of security when you're doing this, as much as possible. So the question is, are you sending the 4 million rows or just a connection? You're sending it all. You're sending the 4 million rows over to her, and you're sending the connection. And we'll go over how big this database got now that I imported 4 million rows, right? Who knows how big this thing is? Yes, sir?
If I can make a suggestion, you should never send anything like this in an email. You should always send a link to a file that they can grab.
Yep, link to a file they can grab. Never send it in an email like the gentleman said. Preferably a distributed file share or a share somewhere on your network that's very locked down, or come up with another great security methodology. We can cover all that after the session if you want. I'm free to talk about this in depth with anybody who wants to hear me ramble on about security, which I'm obsessed about. So how do the different fields in these tables work together? The answer lies in the existing relationships that were imported from the source database. I clicked one table. I clicked find me related stuff, right? Related tables. It brought them in. That's pretty slick. Some DBA set it up. Great. Or somebody. Who cares? It's magic, right? It should all be magic. I'm a firm believer in everything should be magic in SQL. It should be easy. So now we're going to click on the PowerPivot button again. And we're going to click on Design just to illustrate this. We talked about different things. Oh, there's a little Design button at the top. Right there. It's only 2 tabs at the top. And we're going to click on Manage Relationships. Poof. You read this across. So the sales table, they're still called tables, has a column called Location ID. And the related lookup table has, conveniently, Location ID. The next row down, the product ID in the sales table is related to the product ID in the product table. So everything I do kind of just meshes very well together. But they don't have to be the same names. You can import and create your own relations. So you have a cube, somebody has employee ID, you have a table, you have customer ID, maybe they're the same thing, or employee number. Different names, you can mix mash, do your own relationships right here. Click on just sales and location. We'll click edit just to look at that one. Again, you read it across. Like I said, sales location has location ID in the column. Location has location ID. This is a one-to-one relationship or one-to-many. You can't go many to one. It'll give you an error, and you just switch them. If you're ever trying that out. Question in the back. Yes, sir. Can you say that again, sir? So the question was, can you think of this as like a left inner join? Absolutely. There may or may not be related data, right? Typically, if you join on a column, there's going to be at least that column that's related, but there may or may not be additional columns in that table that will have data you want. So, yep, think of it as a left join, or more accurately, probably an inner join, because you want a one-to-one match rather than having optional data. So now we're going to create a chart and filter this by location and product back to Bob, right? So we're going to go back to Excel. I'll just close this. I'm done with PowerPivot for right now. And we're going to click on the chart. Here we go. Remember that other thing that popped up, right, when I said chart and table? So I click it. And look, all my settings went away in the bottom right. They're all gone. All those filters, all those things I had clicked and dragged and done stuff with. But if I click back on my table, they're back. It's worthy to note these are separate objects. They will be related. You'll see how they're play together. But as for filtering and displaying properties, they're not. So under location, we're going to drag location name to slicers horizontal. Click, drag. Okay, what did that do, right? I don't know. Oh, look, location name. We have Detroit, Kalamazoo, Seattle, Party Town, Wiggleville, Winktown, Hug Village, all kinds of different things. Cool cities that I thought were fun to make up. Disney, I don't know, just a weird city name. And under product, we're going to drag product name to slicers, vertical. Okay, I can do that. What did that do? Oh, look, we have product names on the left. We have chicken shawarma, cotton candy, ice cold beer, glass of ice wine, moon cake, whatever you want, right? Whatever your products you happen to be selling. These are stuff I would sell because I like to eat them. So under sales, we're going to check order total. And then we're also going to check, I don't know, sale date. That's everybody wants to slice or filter by time, right? So what did that do? It showed me some stuff on a graph. To me, that looks like a fuzzy carpet. That doesn't tell me anything, right? What are you going to do with that? You can't give that to a manager. They'll be very upset with you if you say, welcome to PowerPivot. Not cool. So let's clean it up. Let's say you just wanted, for illustration purposes, to get the values of the first day of each year. We're going to change the chart type for starters by right-clicking. We're going to change series chart type. I think in lines. People like lines. Click OK. Starting to look better. Now it just looks a little strange. So we're going to say we want the first data of the year, so we'll click on sales date. Click. We're going to go to label filters. Go to between. Like I said, it's 10 years of data, so we'll go to 1/1/2000. Tab to 1/1/2011. Beginning of the year. Click. Hey, there we go. Much better. You can do this. Thank you for the applause. You can do this during different types of data. You don't have to do what I've done, obviously. There's a ton of examples on the web. Makes it really easy. YouTube is a great resource if you don't use it for anything technical. I do development and reporting services, database engine, all kinds of stuff. One of the first things I do is, besides go to like Paul Randall or Brent Ozark's blog or something like that, is I also Google YouTube. It's awesome. If you don't use it, check it out. So let's filter the data and change some selected fields. We're going to click each slicer, which are these things that we've created up here. These little ovals, right? To filter stuff. So if we click on Wiggleville, initialization of the source failed. Of course, it's a demo. It's going to have a problem. Let's close that. Let's try it again. Sorry. Part of the fun experience of doing a live demo. Click on Wiggleville and it'll work. Typically, you don't see that. This is RTM PowerPivot, folks. They released this to people, and this is it. PowerPivot v2 is coming out. Not out yet. So that's the only real bug I've ever even found in the product. I'm sure there's lots of other ones. But if it doesn't work the first time you go to select a filter or a slicer, just do it again. It's nice to tell management that. But it filtered 4 million rows real time. I didn't write a query. I clicked a button. This is the way everything should be going forward. Let's click on cotton candy. Poof. Initialization of the data source failed. And this just started happening on my laptop, too. It was working fine for about 6 months. I'm sure I ran a Windows update and it messed up a DLL. Cotton candy. Poof. Filtered it. It's worthy to note, you can hold down Control and select multiple things. If I was having cotton candy, I'd probably buy French fries for my kids, too, right? And I don't eat that much of that junk, but maybe I'd have some fresh sushi, maybe on a real fancy carnival. And I'd probably have a glass of ice cold beer. Poof. All the sales data is changed real time. So we've filtered it for Wiggleville, and we'll also filter it for Hug Village. And maybe Winktown. Great. 4 million rows, filtered real time in Excel. I didn't engage a DBA. I didn't engage my business intelligence department. I didn't get a contractor to come in who knows data warehousing. I dragged and dropped some stuff. I clicked some stuff. This is nice. You can give this to people. They love it. You want to clear your filters? There's a red X on the, it's a red X on the filter, the oil-like filter in the upper right-hand corner. Clears all your filters. Also worthy to note, so let's click Hideaway Hamlet and Lakeville. If I scroll back over to the right, remember we have a table over there, a pivot table. Guess what it did? It also filtered the pivot table as well. Very nice. So it filters in real time with your slicers as well. They're all related. They're all friends. Kind of harder to show on this demo, but let's click one for Hug Village. How is Hug Village done with selling greasy elephant ears. Obviously, we see the line change. Look, there we go. Hug Village broke down by greasy elephant ears only. Sum of order total. You can change that by right-clicking. You'd be a power user if you start right-clicking things, right? And make it good because you don't want to give this to a manager and say, sum of orders total. You might want to call it grand total or something fun like that. Order total. So play around and have fun with this. Drag stuff to different areas. Drag slicers to columns to whatever you want. Play. You'll get different sets of data. You do different analysis. This is the true value of PowerPivot. You give these to your upper management and say, here's the data. Start doing stuff, and I'll show you how to do it. You give them this exact same demo. Maybe use your own data, because that's what they're going to want. And then they can do drill-down analysis and see how they've been doing per quarter, per year, per whatever you want, per store, per product, per region. Click, drag, drop. Move stuff around. If you didn't want product name and slicers vertical, drag it, click, drag somewhere else. Drag it to slicers horizontal. It's that easy. By the way, it's also worthy to note, if you click the drop-down to the right of one, you can change the field set. You can change the summarize by, you actually have to do it in a summation, so a value. Let's click. Just took a sec. So we can change the summarize by to sum, count, min, max, average. Maybe you want to see how they're doing on average. Or the max to reward some store. Or the min to see if there's some store you have to work on. Or a product you have to work on. You want to know what your top selling product is, right? You want to know where it's selling. You want to market that. You want that store to improve. You want people to copy that store. This is real-time consumable information. It's only limited by your imagination. Play. Yes, sir? There is a way. You have to use the analysis services version of PowerPivot. So if you've ever installed SQL Server, you can install SQL or PowerPivot for SQL Server, I believe it's called. And with that, you can set up a SQL agent job to run every minute, maybe every 5 minutes, if you want good BI information. If you go to a data warehouse department and say, hey, I'm going to have real-time updated information every 5 minutes, they'll say you're crazy. They do every 24 hours at most, and that'd be a great shop, actually. Where I work, we do near real time. Everything's real time. We have crazy business requirements. And I like everything now. I don't want to wait, right? I want a user to be able to do it or to be done automatically for them on a schedule.
How's the latency to Excel services?
I haven't used it for SharePoint with Excel services. I've talked to other people who have. Basically, if you schedule your refreshes to go off hours, who cares about the latency, right? I tune queries all the time. And a lot of people give me lists of queries to tune, and they'll say, hey, this query is taken. This has happened to me a couple years ago. This query is taken an hour. It's taken 30 minutes. We need you to tune it. It's our top offender, top duration. Say, well, when's it run? 2 in the morning. Say, who cares? You know? Let it just refresh at 2 in the morning. Nobody's sitting there watching it. And if they are, I'll deal with that problem. I'll schedule it at a different time or work on tuning it. Question in the way back. Miss? They won't be able to open it. Excel 2007 is not compatible with 2010. So in Excel 2010, you can open up 2007. You can't go vice versa. So how are we doing on time? How much more time do we have? 11:03, and this goes to 11:15? Awesome. Lots of questions, guys. So let's load some data from a CSV source. So scenario, Bob is back. He's now obsessed with making your company eat better. So he runs over to you and he hands you a floppy disk. A floppy, right? You got to be kidding me. And he says there's some CSV data information on it. And CSV stands for comma separated value. A bunch of data separated with commas, just like when you're writing in Microsoft Word. And now let's load it. So first off, you copy it to your hard drive. You click on the PowerPivot window. And let's click on From Text, which if this was a little bigger, that button right there would actually say From Text. I'm going to browse. Let's hold the questions to the end. I'll burn through the rest of the demo, actually. So we're going to go Flat Files. We'll go to CSV. Nutritional data. Open. Worthy to note. Do you want to use the first row as column headers? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Look at it. It'll make sense to you if you click it, if you don't click it. You can click it either way. But my data he gave me happen to have column headers. They don't all have that, though. I click Close. Oh, look, nutritional data is in there. Wonderful. Let's go back to Excel. Click on our pivot table there. Oh, look what's in the upper right-hand corner. Click refresh. It says PowerPivot data was modified. Great, let's refresh it. And it adds it as one of my drop-downs. Wonderful. I thought it did. So let's go back to that. PowerPivot window, nutritional data is there. That worked well. Let's do it again. First time I've seen that in all the demos. Great. I deleted it. I click on that. Browse. Flat files would be a CSV. That's what Bob gave me. Nutritional data. Finish. I wanted rows, didn't I? Sorry. Is it linked is the question. We're going to link it if I can import it correctly. Click that right there. Let's try it again. Very exciting, I know. Bear with me 1 second, folks. There we go. Use the column headers. It's for food groups, because that's what I grew up with. So sorry if you don't like that. Refresh. Let's see if it refreshes. There it is, nutritional data. I've never seen that not work before, but apparently that's a bug. So we're going to open it, expand that, click it. We're going to drag the word food group to slicers vertical. I want to be able to filter on that. I want to know if the dairy group is selling well, or fruits and vegetables, or grains or meats. You can filter by that real time. Let's click on grains and watch the graph change. Everybody watch the graph. What happened? Nothing. Look in the upper right-hand corner. We have to click create. We need a new relationship. You can create relationships here. It'll auto-detect them for you if you have the right kind of keys, which I happen to make conveniently work for my demo. Again, green means go. Forget the details. Magic, right? And there we go. Now let's click on something. Let's click on dairy. Now it's filtering real time, assuming you have that type of product in that store that you're filtering by, or fruits and vegetables. Maybe I should deselect some stores. There we go. Click on dairy, scroll up. Tells you how your dairy does. There. Just taking a minute to come back. Or fruits and vegetables. Whatever you have. Real-time filtering again. 5 minutes left. Please note this will not help you create relationships in real life. These are just for PowerPivot guys. Let's grab data from a stored procedure. Go back to PowerPivot. Go from database, from SQL Server. Question asked earlier. How do you get it from a stored procedure? So here we go. Nerd machine / SQL 2008 R2. We are in Sales Bizzo. Next. Write a query. We're going to call it Get Stores and Regions. Bob gave you this too. Oh, okay. I'll go slower. Thank you. So Bob gave you another scenario. So Crazy Bob was so excited he just fell out of his chair. Next scenario. That's a cool noise, by the way.
I am so sorry.
You're forgiven. And then he yelled that you could run the Get Stores and Regions store procedure and get even more data about a store's regional information. He happened to have this tucked away somewhere. He is Crazy Bob, right? Who knows what he's doing? So we go back to PowerPivot, and we import it from a database. So we selected our database, we connected to it, we chose write the query. And one thing I do, you don't have to do this. Actually, SQL is a fairly sloppy language, which I really like about it, to be honest. But I always write exec, then get. Let's make sure I spell it correctly. Get stores and regions. Right? He made a store procedure, so maybe he's got some filtering. That would be nice. So let's click validate. I do validate these because I like my syntax to always be right. It says down below the statement is valid. Very important. Then I click finish. Great. 20 rows transferred. Okay. Oh, here it is. So we've got some more people, some regional managers named Ben Frank, Scott PowerPivot Schomer, Brad Obama, and Arnold Schwartz. No relation to real people, I'm sure. Let's go back to Excel. Just close this to get out of the way. Oh, look, we see something in the upper right. We know we need to do something. PowerPivot data was modified. We click refresh. Great. It refreshed some stuff. It knew something happened. So let's go back to the PowerPivot window. It's got the query. Let's try to detect it one more time. Detection. Maybe let's re-import it. Apologize, guys. I even ran through this at 1 o'clock in the morning last night to make sure it worked. From SQL Server. Your machine / SQL 2008 R2. Like I say, we consume this every day where I work, and I haven't run across these issues until today, of course, during my live demo, right? So exec, get, stores, and regions, I believe it was called. Get stores and regions, validate, good, finish, close. It's called query. Let's go back, click refresh. It's called query. Query is a horrible name. I'm not going to give that to my boss and say, hey, here's a query, right? Right click, rename, make Excel, right? Get, stores, and regions. Let's go back. Let's refresh. It said query. It now says query again. It's the same thing. That's awesome. We'll just leave it at query. If I would have renamed it first and then gone and refreshed it, it would have actually named it correctly. So it's got some quirks, apparently. So we're going to click Pivot Chart again. Under the PowerPivot field list, which is right here. Oh, look, now there's a refresh. It knew something changed. I bet if I look now, it'll be the right name. There we go, get stores and regions. So if you import it with the right name, it actually had the name query highlighted at the top. I could have named it Scott's Fund Regional Information. It would have imported it with that tab name at the bottom. So I recommend doing it right the first time. So we're going to drag Regional Manager to Slicers Horizontal. That's interesting information. Regional Manager to Slicers Horizontal. Okay. Oh, there they are. Great. Oh, we know we have to create a relationship because it popped up in the upper right. Always pay attention to that. Green means go. That's good. Look, there we go. Let's clear some of these filters out. I don't want any other things going on. And now what I really care about is how these folks are performing. Maybe I want to know how Ben Frank is doing. Initialization of the data source failed. That one I have seen before. And it did actually refresh and work. Let's click off it and click on it. Remember, we're filtering 4 million rows real time, right? With multiple filters. Forget writing a where clause. We're just doing stuff. And by the way, if you scroll to the right, this also is related to our pivot table. So we can see how we are doing in the East region by store. Ben Frank, is related to these stores. And it summarizes it for you. So, congratulations, you've just retrieved data from a stored procedure. And you can pass parameters to it. Works great. Like I said, most people I've dealt with prefer parameters. So, we've done all this without a DBA or anybody else. That's nice. If you have multiple data sets or multiple databases or multiple analysis services cubes, bring them all into one spreadsheet. You can do that with a CSV imported too, whatever you want. Anything you can import, basically anything that has an ODBC driver, bring it into PowerPivot. So now let's import some data from the web. So Bob from HR comes up to you. It's crazy Bob, right? Says, hey, great news, Scott. I just posted some HR information on the web. No big deal, Bob. Okay. You're crazy as usual. So what I'm going to do, I do include the live website that you can actually browse to. But because our internet doesn't work here, I had the forethought to make it an actual HTML file, just so I'd have it for the demo. So here we are. Any table you find on the web, for me, in the table I created, I just went to a table generation page because I was lazy and I don't want to write HTML, to be honest. I don't want it to be that clean. I just said, hey, I want these columns, I want these values. Put them in, generate a table. Then I uploaded that to my wife's website. Because I'm lazy, I'm just a DBA, I don't want to have a website, to be honest. Any table you find, you can copy and put into PowerPivot. Worthy note, SQL Azure now is publishing information to the web. You can download that and bring it in. The US government, you may have heard of them, has a giant data store. Thanks to our current president, he's really pushed, a lot of other people have helped as well, to put a lot of demographic information online. You can see where the flu outbreaks are by store. You can see all kinds of stuff. It's readily accessible, downloadable, and free. So let's check this out. We're going to highlight it. Click, drag, right-click, copy. Go back to PowerPivot, right? PowerPivot window. All we do is click paste. You can paste anything from the clipboard into a tab. That's not too hard. Click down. Clipboard does not contain data in table format. That's what I get when I open it in Firefox, by the way. That's why I have to open this in IE, which I have open right here. Whatever junky thing I used to generate it didn't generate it well, or Firefox or something. It renders it differently. So copy, go back to PowerPivot, PowerPivot window, paste. Poof, there it is. I didn't do any fancy imports. I found some data on the web. You can also append data on the web. So if you go to like EIA.gov and go to oil and petroleum, for example, and grab the year 2008, you can import that right in, copy, paste. Say, oh man, I wanted 2009. Highlight the 2009 section, go back, click paste. It'll say, hey, do you want to import it as a new tab, or do you want to append it to your existing output? I click append. I want 09 to be by 08, right? Puts it in the same tab. It's really, really easy. So let's call this something. Call it HR info, right? And by the way, I do not recommend putting HR info on the web, especially if you have stuff like I do. Thanks to Bob, he's put the hire date and the salaries in there. Wonderful, thanks, Bob. And some comments. Ben Frank is really into kites. Brad Obama likes politics. Arnold Schwartz likes politics. Scott PowerPivot Schomer is a cool DBA and really likes free food, which is true. At least the free food part. So we've done that. Let's click OK. Notice I'm not clicking first row as column headers because it detected them automatically for me. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And now I have HR info. Great. Let's go back to Excel. We know we did something, so we're going to have to refresh, right? And HR info appears. Cool. So under HR info, let's drag salary to Slicer's vertical. Click, drag. Oh, I want it to be at the bottom. What do? I don't have enough room. Let's click it. We can say move down. It changes the slicer order on the page as well. Or on the spreadsheet, excuse me. We know I have to create a relationship because it says so in the upper right-hand corner for stuff to be related. Again, green means go. Click close. And there. So can anybody guess, just shout out some numbers, the size of this 4 million OLTP sales data that I have imported? How big did my Excel file go? It was 9 kilobytes, right? 4 million rows of real-time sales data. Anybody, shoot a guess out. Just yell. 10 meg. Anybody else? 25 what? Meg? 50K. A lot of people tell me it's going to be 200 gig. Who knows, right? Depends on your data. So let's check it out. Let's save it. Typically when I do any work in even Management Studio and I'm writing a TSQL script or in Excel, I save about every 5 minutes. Actually, almost all the time. So I don't want to lose my data. Up here is our spreadsheet. 65 meg. 4 million rows to 65 meg. Put it all in memory, by the way, too. So we're doing all our analysis is in memory. That's why when we click, what's that? That will keep you from emailing it. 65 meg. Depends on your system, actually. But you replace the word 4 million rows with 40 million rows. Add some RAM to your server. Do everything in RAM. This is the way of the future. It's self-service BI. Also, if you haven't checked out Report Builder, that's also self-service BI. If you don't like self-service BI because you're worried about security, it's here to stay, guys, just like the automobile. I'm sure they didn't like that either when it came out, but this is it. Question, sir?
Can you import XML data with this as well?
I haven't done XML data. I've done feeds, though. So fill out your forms, and thank you, guys. Take care. Thank you.